Welcome to Five on the Floor, a Miami Heat and NBA podcast from Ethan Skolnick with Alphonse Sidney, aka Alf954. Brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
Welcome into the latest episode of the 5 on the Floor podcast. I'm Ethan Skolnick here as usual with Alf Sidney. You can find him at Alf954. I'm at Ethan J. Skolnick and at 5 Reasons Sports. If you want to find our website, that's 5reasonsports.com, spelled out 5reasonsports.com. Check out our little dig at the Philadelphia 76ers fans. Check it out on the website and our merchandise page. Our guy Adam Smoot just designed something that Heat fans will like. Also, the other podcasts in our network are all there. You can find 3 yards per carry, analysis, inside joke there, analysis on the Dolphins, and the Josh Rosen, Ryan Fitzpatrick decision, which I don't know why that decision has been made already, as well as Fish Tank. They had Jeff Darlington on this week telling Dolphin stories. And 5 Rings Canes had a bunch of new episodes leading up to UF-UM. I should go the other way. UM-UF. We had this interesting conversation, Alf, which I'm going to get into in a second, on who you should root for if you grew up in Miami but went to Gainesville, and I was a little surprised at that poll. But before we get to the rest of our episode, I want to tell you about one of the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network and the 5 on the Floor podcast, and that's Doral Toyota. So this episode going into the weekend, so this weekend, definitely go check them out. They've got more than 1,200 cars in inventory, in-house financing available for credit-related issues, and you'll work with a dedicated concierge manager if you mention 5 Reasons or 5 on the Floor. They're conveniently located just 3 blocks east of Dolphin Mall. Of course, it's in Doral. They've got pricing at an all-time low, and they'll beat any other Toyota dealer price. So check out DoralToyota.com. That's DoralToyota.com. Or the address, if you want to find it, 9775 Northwest 12th Street. Again, just a few blocks from International Dolphin Malls, 9775 Northwest 12th Street. But if you got a little GPS thing, they will lead you to Doral Toyota. All right, so today, Alf, we're going to get to the Heat Frontcourt. We just did an episode on the Heat backcourt. Create a little controversy here on Twitter about the whole Goran Dragic thing and your conversation with me where you didn't think he was a top 20 starting point guard in the league, and I said he was. I think everybody agrees with me, except like 2 guys. Except like 2. I agreed with me after.
By the end of the conversation, I was like, wait, you're right.
All right, thank you. I like when people come to that conclusion later on. But wanted to get to the front courts today. But before we do, just sort of this is just a football college question. If you grow up in Miami a Canes fan, and I've always considered the Canes kind of a pro team more than a college team, the way that they're covered, there's not that many alumni still. There's a lot of fair weather fans. They've always had sort of a pro attitude. So it's a little bit different than the average college program, right, which has all these boosters and everything else. It's not an SEC program. It's a private school. It's different. If you grew up in Miami a Canes fan, and then you went to Gainesville for school, who do you root for?
I don't know if you realize that this actually applies to me. I grew up a Canes fan, and I went to the University of Florida.
I was not aware of the second part of that.
See, so this actually works out
So you are
perfect.
Udonis Haslem?
Yes, and basically that's the only way me and Udonis are anything alike. I'm not that tough. But I grew up a Canes fan, went to UF, and I will tell you, I lived in the dorms right by the swamp because that's where they put all the black people because there was no air conditioning.
Gotcha.
That's a true story.
It is Gainesville. That's right.
Murphy area. It was the hood of the campus. But yeah, we had no air conditioning, and we were right next to the swamp. So on Saturdays, I would go to the common room, where the kitchen was, and all that stuff. And I would boo the Gators and the Gator fans as they left the stadium from my window. And I would literally have people downstairs trying to bang down the door to the dorm room trying to come get me because I hate the Gators. I absolutely despise them. So, yeah, I went to the school, but I only went to the school because, listen, it was the best education for the cheapest price you can get in Florida. Like, my family couldn't afford to go to the University of Miami. So that's why I went to Gainesville. So I didn't go to Gainesville out of some loyalty to the school. And when I got there, they didn't engender a lot of loyalty anyway because, I consider Steve Spurrier a huge racist. But that's a whole other conversation. But even without that part, I grew up in Miami. I've been a huge Canes fan my entire life. My brother made me a Canes fan. There's absolutely I don't understand how you could grow up a Canes fan, have all that history behind you, go to another school in another state, or go up north past Orlando and somehow become a fan of another team. It makes no sense to me.
Well, and it's interesting you say that, because that is actually how it polled. It polled about 65% that you should remain a Canes fan, and I was surprised by that, because others sort of had the polar opposite opinion that, that's crazy. That if you go to a school, you support the school. Now, I can't really speak to this because I didn't grow up in Miami. I moved down here when I was 13. The Canes were really good. I didn't like them. I came down here in '85, and yeah, I know. Well, but I didn't like them, and I wasn't really a college fan. I've never been as big into college sports as pro sports. Because to me, college sports are pro sports. They just don't admit it, and they just obviously they use the kids.
And that's the other thing. Growing up a Canes fan didn't mean you liked college football at all.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. It was more of a pro thing.
Yeah, being a Canes fan had nothing to do with liking college football.
No. It had to do with the attitude. It had to do with representing Miami. But I really wasn't a Miami. I was a New York person when I moved down here, so I didn't associate with the Canes that much. I didn't like them that much. I had friends who liked them a lot. And so, for me, and then I went, in college 5 years later, I went to a Division III school. I went to Johns Hopkins. The only D1 program they had was lacrosse. I lived with two basketball players in like a suite. We had like a little, they put us together, three of us in a suite together. And, one was the center of the team and the other was the power forward. They were 6'4" and 6'2" and white. So yeah, I didn't, and I covered that team too, but I mostly covered the lacrosse team there. So it was hard for me to, I don't have any, I've never been able to relate, I guess, to what, when I went to Tuscaloosa, I went to Knoxville, I've been to Norman, I've been to Austin. I can't relate to what those people feel. I just can't. It's totally foreign to me. I was in a fraternity in college. And so you associated with the fraternity, but I didn't really associate with the school, again, because we didn't have any D1 programs other than lacrosse. So it's interesting to hear you say that because you sided with most people. All right, let's get to the basketball then. I'm curious, and I did not know that about you.
Well, I will tell you that there was a contingent of us, of black students, that just did not support anything athletic at UF.
Mm-hmm.
Just because we felt certain things about the school and the way they treated us, if you will. Right. And we just, and most of us were from the Crib. And if you know what the Crib is, that's Broward and Dade, sometimes Palm Beach, if we decide to let them in. But if you were from the Crib and you were a Canes fan, you remained a Canes fan. You really didn't switch over. Some people did later on, but a lot of us just, we just never really latched on to the school like that.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. Now, whereas we're taping this pod's, I think we're going to put it out between Friday night and Saturday morning. You and I are making a trip to Magic City Casino tonight to check out the High, which we've been promoting here, which is their sort of new High-Lie/game/nightclub/beer, which is really main reason we're going. But we'll probably tape from there or record from there at some point. But by the time this comes out, and by the time people listen to this, Miami have lost to Florida by 3 touchdowns, and I hope not.
Whoa.
Well, I hope not, because I do feel like this has been about as good an offseason as Miami could possibly have. But it just has this feeling of crashing down a little bit like it did last year in the LSU game. So hopefully it doesn't happen. Let's get to the basketball. We did the backcourt yesterday, kind of how that would shake out. All right, so let's look at the front court for the Heat. You've got at the center position guys who, again, we're going to put Udonis to the side. We know what his role is. It's to kick people's asses in practice. So we're going to put Udonis to the side. Yante Maton is gone. So we've got in the front court, we've got Bam Adebayo. We've got Myers Leonard. We've got Kelly Olynyk. We've got James Johnson, kind of in the power rotation. We then have Jimmy Butler, naturally, Derek Jones Jr., possibly KZ Okpala. Is there anybody I'm missing?
No, I don't think so. Duncan Robinson?
Duncan Robinson, that's right. Who,
yeah.
Technically, they list kind of as a 4. All right, so that's 8 guys, right? Now, we talked yesterday about 5 guys. Haslam makes 14. I think that's what they have, right? It's 14 guys.
Yeah, they're at 14.
Okay, so we've got 8 guys. All right, so let's take a look at possible combinations here in the front court. Jimmy Butler's a small forward. We agree on that? I think, right?
Yeah, that's
Jimmy Butler's a small forward.
Yeah.
Okay. Bam Adebayo is the 5, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, just depends on how you word it, but yeah, he's starting. He's going to be at the 4 or the 5.
At the 4 or the 5.
Just depending. I think it's just depending on the matchup.
Who, in your view, is the best fit to fill that other front court spot?
Okay, this is a little hard for me just because, I was such a big fan of Kelly and Bam last year. I thought Kelly and Bam, and that's not just my thought. Like, if on paper, statistically, they might have been the best 1-2 duo, best 2-man duo on the Heat last year. I'm not sure, but I think it's pretty damn close. And they played so well together, and because the things that Kelly can do offensively just helps the team out, helps the offense run, and then defensively, Bam can kind of make up for Kelly's mistakes. I think people underrate Kelly as a defender. No, he's not a rim protector by any means, but he's a good, smart defender. Like, he plays his role, and Bam can basically clean up anybody's mess. But after talking to Coach Thorpe, check out that podcast. It was a couple weeks ago. We went through the entire Heat roster with Coach Thorpe. Myers Leonard's shooting really, really, really intrigues me, right? Because if you look at the starting lineup, let's say it's Winslow, Waiters, Bam, and Jimmy, right? Where's the shooting coming from there?
Well, it would have to come from, okay, Jimmy is a minus 3-point shooter to a flat 3-point shooter, right?
Winslow's become a plus shooter, but not in volume.
Not in volume, and he's going to be in a little bit of a different role, so he has to adjust to that. And Dion was second half of last season, but as we said, sometimes that's not the best thing for the offense.
And you don't want to rely on shooting from Dion. You just don't. You don't want that to be his role, because he will take that role and he'll take it very seriously.
But if you're going to make a decision, if the decision here is between Olynyk and Leonard, I think it needs to be Olynyk. And the reason, and that's without having watched Myers Leonard a ton. I mean, obviously I saw the playoff game where he went off. He's been hard to find, though, in certain times. I mean, he has been kind of in and out of rotations. And
I mean, the whole playoffs, the entire playoffs, he went off, which is
he did, and they didn't have Nurkic, right? So I mean, they needed him. And some of his role decreased because when Nurkic kind of stepped up there, and then they went small sometimes. But I think that if you look at Olynyk and Leonard, from what I've seen of Leonard, there's just more to Kelly's game than there is to Leonard's. I understand what you're saying about the shooting. Kelly was a pretty good 3-point shooter a couple of years ago. Now, I think what happened with Kelly, and why I would start him beyond the fact that I think his skill set's a little bit more diverse, is I think part of what happened with Kelly last year, and Spoelstra alluded to this, is that Kelly kind of got yanked in and out of rotations, right, and in and out of his previous role. Like the year before, pretty consistent role for Kelly Olynyk, and he finished a lot of games too. Last year, he just didn't. Now they say it doesn't have anything to do with the minute count, and I sort of believe them at this point because they've been so adamant with me. So many people in the organization have been so adamant. They heard me on the podcast about that, and they and some of our guys writing about it, and so they say that it didn't have anything to do with Kelly hitting certain incentives and the tax and everything, and that's why he sat. And they're kind of back what Spoelstra said, which was that they had they were working back James Johnson at the 4. They still had Hassan, which means that, Hassan and Bam were soaking up the minutes at the 5, which meant there weren't any real minutes for Kelly at the 5. And then you also had Derek Jones Jr., who they kind of put in there as a long arm, skinnier 4. And they played well when he was on the court in that role. And so he just got squeezed. And that's why I would say that unless, he really regresses, I think Kelly Olynyk is the combo with Bam. And there's also, like you said, there's history there. So there's history of the two of them playing well together. They have a connection together. They both handle the ball well. You can run dribble handoff stuff through both of them. They understand their roles. I just think that's to me, that's a better fit right now.
Yeah, and listen, I don't think you can go wrong either way. And I think those are the only two options, right? I love James Johnson, but historically he's always been better off the bench. And he has a lot to prove this year, right? I think he's in shape. He needs to cut his hair. But beyond that, he's always been better off the bench. I think he's more comfortable. He's playing against second units, so he's more comfortable with the ball in his hands. He's more confident. When James Johnson is confident and he's playing within himself, he's a really good bench player, really good 6th, 7th, 8th man, right? But when you put him out there in a starting lineup and you're really relying on him, I think that's when he tends to disappoint. And a lot of it last year, I want to chalk up to injuries. We'll see what happens this year, but I think a lot of that was injuries last year. So the only other thing you could even think of is starting Derrick Jones Jr., which I don't like because he's not as good of a shooter as Kelly or Myers Leonard. And I think neither Myers Leonard or Kelly are great rebounders, but at least they have the size. I just think you're way too small, and you're already probably not going to be a very good rebounding team to put a guy like DJJ at the 4 and then push Bam to center. I just don't think will work. So right now I think the only options are Myers Leonard or Kelly Olynyk, and I don't think they're bad options at all. I think they're actually really good options because I think both of them fit very well alongside Bam.
Well, look, it depends when we're talking about rebounding. If we're talking about offensive rebounding or defensive rebounding, Derrick Jones Jr. is a plus offensive rebounder.
Oh, fantastic offensive rebounder.
At this point. But yeah, you're right. As a defensive rebounder, Bam's going to need help, and at least if Kelly can positionally handle that. I mean, you're right. They're not going to be a good rebounding team. I mean, Jimmy Butler is somewhat of a plus rebounder for his spot. Justice certainly is for the point guard spot. So they will get – it's interesting. It's a little bit similar to the big 3 years where they got a lot of their rebounding inverted. They got it from their perimeter guys, and more so than their front court guys.
Dwayne and LeBron handled a lot of rebounding for those teams.
They did, and a lot of times they would get the rebound and go, which allowed them to ignite their break. And I think you'll see that some with Justice and with Jimmy. And not even Justice and Jimmy. If you start Kelly. There's going to be 5 guys on the floor that can grab a rebound and go. Yeah, they will have really good ball handling. That's true, and that's another reason. That is the ball handling thing with Kelly. Until I see more of Myers Leonard, I've got to lean towards Olynyk there. I would not start James Johnson. I don't, even if he's healthy. He's basically, career wise 32% from 3. He's not going to create enough space for Jimmy and for Bam and Justice to be able to operate. I don't, and I just think there's too much duplication with him on the court with Justice.
Yeah, he takes the ball out of Justice's hands.
He does, and sometimes he does good things with it, but last year it was like dribbling to nowhere. I don't think that he's a good fit as a starter, especially if you're starting Dion. I mean, then it's Dion, Justice, Jimmy, and JJ. No, you can't.
That's just will not work.
You can't. So I don't think that he can start. The Derrick Jones Jr. thing is interesting. I mean, he and Bam have this personal friendship that's led to this connection, but I think that Kelly and Bam are a better fit from a playing standpoint. So I would probably lean that way. Let's look at this now in the context of the league. I think I think you and I agree the Heat's backcourt could be pretty good if it shapes out right. How good can this front court be? In other words, is Bam, and I know there's some rumors out there about what really happened with Bam on the USA team. I don't know. Okay, there's rumors. I think some of it was a little irresponsible the way it was put out. I mean, since nothing's been reported cleanly. I know people were a little frustrated. He didn't beat out someone like Mason Plumlee. Sometimes that can just be personal preference of the head coach.
I think that kind of lent to the rumors because people are trying to find an explanation. Something doesn't make sense. So
right, and
for the
right. Yeah, and so I don't know that it dims like Bam's, light here in terms of where he's headed, the fact that he didn't make that team. He got invited. They saw something in him. The workouts were impressive. It's not the whole thing that we saw, but they were impressive in terms of what we saw. And he has been working on his game. And now, he won't be traveling around the world playing. But, I mean, I believe he'll be in the gym. It's just the kind of person he is. They had a front court last year at times, okay? When they had Whiteside disengaged and they had James Johnson, who for a stretch, there was a stretch of about 12 games, he did not grab more than 3 rebounds. I mean, just how does that even happen for power forward in the league? You were getting absolutely nothing out of your forward spots last year for large stretches of the season. Yeah. Like nothing. They couldn't. We talked about them rotating all these guards. I mean, look, just adding Jimmy and to me clearing Hassan out of the way, you're vastly improved. If you can find a role for Kelly, you've got Olynyk. You haven't lost anything significant. We haven't talked about Akpala because we haven't seen him. He couldn't play in the summer league.
We have no idea what we're getting, and so it's hard to even just count on anything from him right now.
It is, and I thought he might participate in summer league, but they didn't feel he was ready once he finally got approved. I think it was on July 6th to actually play because of the way that trade worked. But to me, their front court looks thinned out a little bit. I think, and this is not disrespect to Hassan, but people can take it this way. I've been told by people in the organization that losing him was adding 5 wins.
Wow.
Just because it's just the burden that's taken off, not just the coach, but the others on that team to placate him, to play in a way that he could play, that he would be happy about, was just mentally and emotionally exhausting. Okay.
Yeah.
And you were doing that for 3 years. And it just got to a point where they just couldn't do it anymore. And Bam is a low maintenance, player and person. And so it's a lot easier. You don't have some of the stresses you had last year about getting everybody minutes at the 4 because you can get Kelly some minutes at the 5 if you need to. I agree with it. I think that losing Hassan is 5 wins. I do. And these things are hard to quantify, but I think that's it. And then if you say that Jimmy Butler is adding 5 wins, okay, so losing a Dwayne Wade is losing what, 2 wins based on where Dwayne was at the stage of his career?
Yeah, I mean, Dwayne was it was fun, and it was reliable at some points at the end of games, but it really was more about the tour than it was about. I mean, he played well, but I mean, you're taking him out and adding Jimmy Butler, like you're saying, it's a net gain,
right?
And the thing beyond Hassan's personality and what he meant to the coaching staff and all that. One of the things that we've talked about a lot is that the definition of roles this year, and where people aren't questioning, the whole Kelly thing last year. Should Bam start? There's some guys on this team that across the board, Bam, Justice, and Bam, Justice, and Jimmy. We know that is basically the core of your starting lineup. We know that right now. And then you start filling in the other pieces. And then everyone settles into a role. Last year, I mean, you don't know if it's Bam, you don't know if it's Whiteside, you don't know if it's Gorn, if it's Winslow. Like, it was just too much stuff up in the air. There were 19,000 2 guards. All that stuff is cleared out right now. So when you say addition by subtraction when it comes to Hassan, it's not just about, and with Ellington and Tyler Johnson, it's not just about are they good guys or are they bad guys. It's just it's building a team. Like,
right.
It was just too hard to set rotations. People were all over Spo about his rotations last year. It's almost like, what did you want the guy to do? There were so many overlapping skill sets.
Well, and it showed on his face all year. It showed on his face.
Oh my God,
he
looked frustrated.
All right, we'll finish this episode up in a second because we want to evaluate the entire front court as a whole. But first, I want to tell you about a great old and new sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. They're back. BetDSI.com. BetDSI.com. It's really easy. Go there. Bet on games. I was doing it all last year. I was always losing on the last play. Okay, I was going to have the 5-for-1 payoff, but you won't lose because you're not as pathetic as me. So go there, betdsi.com, and we've got like 4 podcasts doing this on our network, but we just want you to use our code because we're selfish. 5101. It's 5101. It's different from last year. Don't use the one from last year. Okay, a lot of you did. Don't use it. FIVE 101. Go to BetDSI, type that in, and you'll find out about all the bonuses that you get there. Basically, they're giving you free money. Okay, so they're giving you free money to gamble extensively, but you're not going to get yourself in any difficulty with it. Okay, just stay under control. Okay, that's what I do, and you'll have fun with it. It'll make the games a lot more fun to gamble. Of course, Miami FSU, the big one on this weekend as we're talking about this, but you can go on there and you can bet the over on the Heat if you want. I think it's 42.5 right now, Alf. I still feel pretty damn good about that. You don't got to go out to Vegas to do that, although you and I want to do that again. But and I will. But you can just bet the over 42.5. You want to bet? You think the Panthers had a good offseason? We always say that the Panthers had a good offseason. Go bet the over. Get suckered in by that again. You still have time to bet the over on the Dolphins if you want to bet the over on the Dolphins. I think that's 5.5. I think the Dolphins will be. Well, I think the Dolphins will be upset if they go over, actually. So I think Steve Ross is going to put all the money on going.
You guys keep asking why is Fitzpatrick starting?
I know.
That's why Fitzpatrick started.
Right, because Steve Ross has the under in a lot of different ways. But go to betdsi.com. Again, that's DSI.com. We'll tell you more about it here as we go forward. All right, let's finish this thing up now. The Heat front court. If it's Bam, Olynyk, Butler, and then it's, say, a bench of Myers Leonard, James Johnson, Derek Jones, and KZ Okpala is kind of the wild card. And Udonis Haslem is the ass kicker from the bench.
Did you forget Duncan Robinson again?
I did. Duncan Robinson is an interesting prospect. Okay. I think
he's an NBA player.
I think he is an NBA player, and I thought it was interesting they stuck him in at the 2 at times last year. I think he's an NBA player. I don't know that he's Mike Miller. I know that's a comparison that's made. I don't know that he's got kind of as much.
No.
People remember Mike Miller with the Heat when all the wiggle was gone because his back was broken. But Mike Miller was a really dynamic player when he broke in the league. I don't think that's Duncan Robinson. Do I think he can be a useful piece on a team that needs shooting? Yes. And he has good size. The question is,
I think it's underrated how big he is. He is. He's a legit 6'8", isn't he?
Yeah. Yes, he is. No, he is. People don't think of him that way, but he is. They think of him more as like a tweener guy. He's not.
And he moves well for a guy that big.
He does. Can he move well enough defensively to be kept out there?
There were some clips last year of the way he moved on defense, and that guy can defend. Now, I'm not saying he's some world beater, but that when a guy's an NBA player when he hits that second or third year in summer league and he starts to dominate. Like, he doesn't look like he should be in the floor with the rest of these guys. That's what Duncan Robinson looked like in summer league this year.
He did. Now, some of it had to do with the fact that he was also playing, I think, with a better team than some of those other guys. But he looked he looked good. I like him as a player. I shouldn't have forgotten to mention him. I apologize to Duncan Robinson, whose nickname, by the way, is Debo, if you didn't know that, from Friday. I don't know if you're aware of that. It is. I mean, he looks like Debo, right? Exactly.
Yeah,
so let's say, so that's the collection of 8 players here. Again, apologize to Duncan Robinson. How good is this front court potentially?
When you it's hard to just sit there and look at players and line them up against the rest of the, let's say, the Eastern Conference. I just feel like the way it's going to be hard to tell because you don't know what Jimmy's going to look like with Kelly and Bam, right? Kelly and Bam play well together, but what does Jimmy throw a wrench into that, and maybe they'll have to switch it up? But I do think that those 3 guys can play together very well because Kelly or Bam don't need the ball, right? And they play off of other people very well. And Jimmy can pass. Jimmy can create. Jimmy knows where to find guys, and those guys know where to be. They know how to play their roles. And defensively, Bam and Jimmy, Bam, Jimmy, and Winslow, it's a nightmare defensively for other teams. So when you put it all together, I don't know if just when you put the names against other names in the Eastern Conference, where do they line up? But I think when that chemistry hits, I think those 3 guys, whether it's Kelly, Bam, and Jimmy, or it's Myers, Bam, and Jimmy, which I think we're both kind of under the impression it's going to be Kelly, Bam, and Jimmy. When that chemistry hits, I think those guys, it's going to be a really, really potent front court. What is it, top 3 in the East? I don't think so, but it's definitely a top 4, top 5. And then when you put the whole team together and you have that, I think you have a good bench. I think the Heat are. I'm coming more around to a 4 seed than a 5 or a 6.
Yeah.
The more that I really look at this team, and then I look at the bench, a bench of, Goran, James Johnson, Derek Jones Jr., Myers Leonard. When you put all that together, I just think that they can be pretty potent. Tyler Hero. I think I'm starting to see a 4 seed.
Yeah, I've seen a 4 seed for a while, to be honest.
You've been, which is funny. You're never higher on the Heat than I am.
No, but no, because why did I not like the team the past couple of years? Because the pieces made no sense. That matters. When people talk about chemistry, they always get this argument wrong. Chemistry is not about whether guys go to dinner with each other, okay? There's been lots of players that have not liked each other, okay? Jamal Mashburn and Tim Hardaway had plenty of success, never really liked each other. That is one of the most overrated things. That 05-06 team that won a championship is one of the most dysfunctional teams I ever covered. They were screaming at each other. Gary Payton and Dwayne Wade, Dwayne of all people, at that stage of his career, screaming at each other in front of us in Chicago, okay? Team chemistry is overrated in that sense. But chemistry matters a lot in terms of basketball pieces and how they fit. A lot, and more so than I think any other sport. We talk about offensive line play in the NFL, or maybe a line that plays together in the NHL. It matters, okay? In baseball, I don't think it matters at all. Maybe a double play combination, that's it. Maybe a pitcher-catcher battery, but beyond that, it's an individualist. It's an individualist sport. But I just think when you look at basketball, it matters. And one of the things that again, I'm not saying I'm a great talent scout, okay? We have Nekias Duncan for that, okay? I'm not, okay? But I think the one thing I've been able to sort of do covering this league for 20 years and following it when I was a kid is identify pretty quickly whether pieces fit on a team. And like, just you can sort of put it on paper and say, okay, with this guy will make sense. This guy with that guy will make sense. I do think I'm good at that, okay? And I've been able to do it over and over with these Heat teams and kind of known in training camp whether it was going to work or not. And it was just very obvious last year it was not. You can't. I mean, you didn't need to be, my history of being able to identify it to know that. Like, it just didn't.
It was just too many B- players.
Right. With overlapping skill sets, okay?
And no true alpha except for Dwayne. And Dwayne on his, in his
on his last legs. Like how are you going to decide kind of, who to play? I mean, every time you played one guy, this was the thing. It was a whack-a-mole situation. Like, if Spoelstra played one guy, like, okay, you could play Kelly to give yourself the dribble handoff stuff and the spacing, but you might lose something defensively and in rebounding. You could play Dion to give yourself sort of a jolt offensively, but you were also going to take everybody else out of the offense, right? You could everything you did meant you were going to lose something else, okay? And so, Hassan, you needed rebounding, but then you were going to get the pouting. Like, everybody had a hole, okay? This team, I'm not saying that none of the players have holes. I'm just saying when you look at it, the only hole from a team perspective that I see is it looks like they're a little short on shooting and they're a little short on rebounding. And yes, those two things matter. If you can't shoot and you can't rebound, I mean, if you're not a great shooting team, you're going to need to be a good rebounding team to give yourself more opportunities. So these are issues you and I are going to be talking about all season. But as far as the pieces, like, you and I have not had a hard time, and that's one of the reasons I want to do this exercise. You and I have not had a hard time over the past 2 days saying, okay, here's a combination that could work. Here's a combination that could work. Here's a combination that could work. I had a lot of trouble with that last year. Right? This year, the roles are can be more defined from the very beginning, and I think that's a plus for this roster.
And when you talk about fit, what I see with this team, and I hope that this is what happens. I'm pretty positive, and I think a lot of Heat Twitter is really anxious about is Winslow going to start or not. But what I see to this team, the core is Winslow, Bam, and Jimmy. And to me, that you have a defined personality and an attitude, because I do think those three guys, Bam is a little bit more fun-loving than the other two.
Right.
But I think you have three ultra competitive, ultra just professional. I know sometimes you hear other things about Jimmy, but Jimmy just wants to win. You have three guys that are defensive-minded. You just have these competitors out there with a little bit of a nasty streak. And I think they're going to set the tone for the whole team, which is why I'm just so adamant that Justice needs to start, because that to me is your core going forward. The other pieces, you bring them in and out for shooting, which is why eventually I think Hero and Olynyk, with those three guys, is going to be a super potent lineup because of the shooting, and even Myers Leonard as well. And if Goran can get his shooting back, and even Waiters. But those three guys to me is why I look at this team and I say, wow, this team has an identity with those three guys. And it really, and that's why I keep creeping them. At first I was around a 6 or a 7, then I was at 5 or 6. I'm creeping up more and more to this team could possibly be a 4 seed. And then also just because I look around the rest of the East, like I don't believe in Boston.
I don't either.
At all.
I don't believe in Indiana either, because I don't know when Oladipo is going to be right, and they don't have enough complementary scoring on that team, in my view, especially with Bogdanovich gone. And so those two teams, and honestly, Toronto, man, I don't know. Like, is Siakam ready to be the lead guy? I'm not sure.
It's Milwaukee, Philadelphia, and
everybody else, and everybody else, and even I'm not saying the Heat's going to be better than Milwaukee. I don't believe they are, no. But Milwaukee did lose some pieces. I mean, they did lose Brogdon. They've lost some. They lost some of their bench, and it didn't add a lot. They added a couple pieces that could help them, but a little to the older side. I don't know necessarily that they're going to be as good as last year. I think to a certain degree they snuck up on some people last year. Giannis is playing internationally this summer. He may be a little bit worn down. He's had a lot more on his schedule. The MVP thing. I'm not saying they're going to take a big step back. I don't know necessarily, though, that they're going to win as many games as they did last year. Like, they were clearly the best team in the regular season last year. Better than Golden State. I mean, their numbers from a analytics standpoint, they were the best team in the league. Like, they were historically good team in terms of one of the best teams in the league in the past few years. But I don't know that they're necessarily going to be there this year. Now, Philly, I like. You and I, that's a whole nother podcast. Some of the personalities there, I'm not sure. The basketball,
I like the basketball-wise.
Basketball-wise, I love their fit. Yeah, I think they've done a really good job constructing that thing again. But I don't know for sure. But I think it would be crazy not to put those two teams ahead of the Heat. The rest of them, I'm not sure. I mean, Toronto's getting respect, but they just lost arguably the best player in the league.
And then what about – I don't believe in Toronto at all. I think Toronto's lower half of the Eastern Conference playoffs, to be honest with you. I think Boston, just because Brad Stevens and the Boston try-hard thing, like, they might have a really good regular season. Brooklyn. I
don't believe in them either. I like their coach.
They could potentially be – they have a good coach. They added Kyrie.
And they lost D'Angelo, and D'Angelo was healthy last year. Now that Kyrie,
I think Kyrie's an upgrade, though.
He's an upgrade. He's an upgrade if he plays. There's a lot of games he doesn't play. Now they did lose, LeVert for part of last season. They lost Dinwiddie for part of last season. So if they have those guys healthy, they'll have a better complement on the backcourt. But I'm not total. I like Jared Allen, but I don't love their front court depth. I think I think they overachieved last year. And now it's the same thing that happened when Kyrie came into Boston. Like, it was a team that overachieved, and then Kyrie comes in and they're supposed to get better. And his personality sometimes doesn't necessarily make you better. So we'll talk about that going forward. Before we go, though, I want to tell you about another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, the attorneys at Seltzer Mayberg. We know them well because we have an office with them, actually. It's down on I-95. It's right before Golden Glades. So if you know what you're doing? If you're stuck trying to get to Golden Glades coming out of Miami, which you will be, you can just pull over and just come visit them. Just make up a case that you want them to settle for you. They'll settle it for you. It's a 15,000 square foot office, I-95. It's around 103rd Street. They will handle cases from all over the state. Call now, 24/7 service for a free consultation. That's onecalllegal.com. I've sent 4 people there, okay? I can tell you that they have very good results with traffic tickets because one of those 4 people was me, and they got it thrown out. So 1-855-5000-LAW, 1-855-5000-LAW. That's a Seltzer Mayberg law firm. Alf and I will be back next week. We're going to Magic City Casino now. Join us. If you're hearing this, come join us at the High. We'll hang out with you there. Have a couple beers. Talk soon.